The research suggests that posture or correcting posture doesn't actually improve chronic pain outcomes. What posture is, it's just a reflection of your inner state.
Wow.
Right?
Amazing.
It's the
Yeah,
outer reflection of your inner state.
Totally.
So you said it, when someone comes in with all these loads that are going on in our environment right now, they might come in a slumped posture, a posture that might reflect overwhelm, overload, sadness, disconnection, etc. And that hints us towards the safety of their nervous system.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Well, are you or is someone you love struggling with chronic pain? If so, you're not going to want to miss this next video, which is a conversation I had recently with my friend, Dr. Adam Bletsoe. Dr. Adam is a chiropractor, he's a chronic pain specialist, and a mindfulness and meditation teacher with a real passion for helping people heal from chronic pain and find their purpose on the other side of it. Along with this video, I'm also releasing a really incredible 20-minute guided meditation with Adam to help you heal from chronic pain. You'll find the link to that video right up here and in the video description below. I hope you enjoy this amazing conversation with Dr. Adam Bletsoe. Adam Bletsoe, it's been a minute since I've seen you, interacted with you, talked to you. How are you doing, my friend?
Literally, I'm well. It has been a long minute.
A
few decades.
I know, it has been decades. I feel like we need to start this out just by sharing with everyone watching that you and I know each other because we were grade 9 science buddies.
I love that. I love that you remember that.
Sitting next to each other in grade 9 science because we were talking about this and we feel like we were seated according to our last names because it was Bell and then it was Bletsoe and then
absolutely
there we were in grade 9
Were we
science.
at the front of the class?
I feel like we were at the front of
Always,
the class.
Right? With the B's, yeah, alphabetical.
I feel like we were. And this, strangely enough, I was thinking about that this morning. I don't have many memories of that. Like, I mean, that must have been 5 months of our lives or something. I remember the day that we met because I was nervous about being in grade 9 and not knowing anybody. And then here you were sitting next to me, such a sweet, kind person, turned to me and said, "Hi, I'm Adam." And I just felt like, oh, I'm going to be okay in grade 9, right?
I love that. I love that you remember that because when you share that, it makes me feel good about who I was then, you know?
Well, and maybe this is how we can get into this conversation because on your website, you said around age 13, 14, that you were suffering from anxiety and pain and all these issues. And I had no idea. So maybe we can start this conversation. You can share with us your story of how you got into this work that you're doing now, what inspired that, because it seems like that period of your life and those experiences really contributed to this work that you're now doing in the world, helping people heal from chronic pain.
Absolutely. I think you're right. It all started with healing myself, really. And you're right. You make me think of the timeline a little bit more. It would have been in grade 8, the year before. I was just at the bottom. I just felt totally disconnected. I felt anxious, unworthy. I was in pain. I had headaches, back pain, eczema on my hands, all sorts of stuff that maybe a lot of the doctors, were saying were kind of normal and common and you'd grow out of them. And, my parents were doing their best. And I remember one day I came home from school and I was just so down and bummed. And I was standing at my window of my bedroom, which happened to overlook this beautiful park in Milton. And I think I just had, what I would consider like a spiritual moment, really, like a moment of sort of swirling downward into this dark abyss and, like the depression or the angst and whatnot, but witnessing it, not being in it as much, and then kind of down there was this awareness of like, you are valuable, you are worthy. You need to kind of go get yourself together. You need to kind of clear this up and share it with other people because there's lots of people that are feeling this way. And that's what you're here to do. And that was news to me.
Well, that's an incredible insight to have at the age of 13, because I think of the 13-year-olds in my neighborhood and they're out playing basketball, right? And they're, you know what I'm saying? So I think it's pretty incredible that, number one, that you were having these health challenges and issues at that young age.
Sure.
And then number two, that you had this insight that you are going to not only heal yourself, but that your mission eventually would be to help other people heal as well.
Yes. Yeah. I usually say it's like I was inappropriately young when I learned this.
Right.
Like, who wants to be this old learning that stuff?
So when you talk about, I just want to touch on that witness for a moment, because you said something really interesting. You said that it was more like you were all of a sudden witnessing your experience rather than being in it. And, we'll get into this when we talk about meditation and mindfulness, but was that your first glimpse really of being the witness and the observer as we do when we meditate?
Kind of like the first witnessing of the witnessing almost. There's this weird story that I share in a lot of my classes where previous to that experience, I used to wake up in the morning early and take my blankets and huddle over top of the heat vent as the heat came on in our home in Milton, and the whoosh and the sensation and the focusedness in that quiet moment would relax me, and I would become so calm and zen. And I would notice that more, the calmness. And knowing what I know now, I believe that was sort of the beginning of me finding an observer in me, finding the capacity to witness, such that when I was suffering like I was, which I had been, but when I was suffering like I was that specific day, there was some faculty within me that had the capacity on that day to sort of step back and notice and say, hold on, you're not that. You're bigger than that, better than that. And so, but you're right. I do believe it grew. And then that was the day it mattered.
It's just amazing to me. Let's talk about chronic pain then, because your passion in life, your work, you're a chiropractor, you're also a teacher of meditation and mindfulness, but your passion really is helping people heal from chronic pain. So let's first talk about what is chronic pain.
Oh yeah, cool. Chronic pain is pain that lasts longer than the tissue damage, basically. And it's not uncommon for us to have injuries or even what we call perceived injuries. So in other words, there wasn't any damage, but maybe we had a strain or a sprain or something like that, and we perceive them as damage. And they have a natural healing course, like, 3 months, maybe 4 months. And if pain lasts beyond the natural healing duration, what we now know is that the pain is actually an echo in the nerve circuits. And so it's no longer about the physical damage. It's actually an echo in the brain and the nerve circuits. And that part of your brain is certainly activating a sensation of pain in a body part without a doubt. And the behavior of pain and all that, it's not all in your head at all. But the bulk of it, the signaling is from the nervous system. And so chronic pain is more about nervous system state or regulation than it is about old injuries.
That is so liberating.
So liberating, right?
Well, because it to me, it feels like, okay, we can do something about it then, right? Because it's not a tissue that's been damaged and is damaged forever, and I'm never going to heal from this. I don't suffer from chronic pain, but I know so many people that do, family members, loved ones, and it's something that can just go on and on and on forever with a sense of hopelessness to it. And so just the fact that, okay, your body, your tissue can heal. I love the word that you use to describe it, the echo within your nervous system, within your brain. How can we heal it then? If that is the cause, the true cause, you mentioned on your website about the brain not feeling safe or needing to create a sense of safety for the brain, a sense of, maybe being soothed or whatever. Is that
calm, connection?
Okay. Yeah.
So I like to start in the clinic when I'm explaining it to people that we're looking at the balance between danger and safety. And chronic pain is an indication of lack of safety. You might say globally, we don't always start there, but at least lack of safety with respect to that pain. And so that's not all that weird. If you, like you said, if you know anybody that has chronic pain, they'll often really have a very tumultuous relationship with their painful body part. Their painful body part becomes a bit of an enemy.
Yes. So
it's like we're living with an enemy. In Toronto, we always joke that it's like having a raccoon in your green bin. Like, it's very upsetting. So do you guys have compost bins out there?
Yes, we do. We do. Yes, we do.
But like a raccoon, people get really up in arms about this.
Yeah.
And so if we've got a painful body part, we tend to get very engaged and intense about that painful body part. But that's part of you.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. I'm just thinking of someone I know that I remember she was describing her health issues to me, and she used the terminology, I just don't know why my body keeps betraying me.
Totally, right? Yeah, and that's a fair, like you said, it's a very reasonable thought.
Yeah.
That comes from within as well, comes from that part of our brain that is defending us. So here's that danger safety metaphor again, is that your brain is trying to protect you from a perceived threat. And at this point, now there's been a lot of things that's led up to this, but at this point where we find ourselves, where many people find themselves, is having a threat that resides right within their own body.
Right. So in that particular example, she's perceiving her own body as the threat. And so that's almost like a catch-22.
Yes. And then the irony becomes, well, how am I supposed to like this or appreciate it or add gratitude or anything to this thing that's really hurting me,
right,
or causing me struggle?
This raccoon.
This raccoon.
How am I going to love this raccoon?
In my green bin.
Yeah.
It's making such a mess.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's interesting if you think of the unfoldments, right, Adam, like within the last few years on the planet. Certainly, I would think that it hasn't helped people become calmer, feel safer, right? I'm just curious how you've seen the pandemic and all the recent events, inflation and cost of living and all these stressful circumstances. How have you seen in your patients, how does that affect someone's physiology and their posture and that sense of safety that you're speaking of? How have you seen that show up in people's bodies?
I even love the idea that you say posture there, because it brings up two things. One is that the research suggests that posture or correcting posture doesn't actually improve chronic pain outcomes at all. But that's a common misstep, right? We believe that, and our society says, sit up straight. But what posture is, it's just a reflection of your inner state.
Wow.
Right?
Amazing.
It's the outer reflection of your inner state.
Totally.
So you said it, when someone comes in with all these loads that are going on in our environment right now, they might come in a slumped posture, a posture that might reflect overwhelm, overload, sadness, disconnection, etc. And that hints us towards the safety of their nervous system. Imagine in that time, this individual that's so disconnected, vulnerable, maybe has little resources at this time, and our best advice is to sit up straight. It sounds like do better. Yeah, do better.
Do better. Good vibes only. Okay, everyone?
Yeah, right? It's just so inappropriate and unfair. So you're not wrong. And it's become a bit distant, right? Hasn't COVID gotten just far enough away that many of us have forgotten?
Yes. Well, yes, but I don't think our bodies have forgotten.
No, right? Yeah, we got that wisdom. So 95% of our brain information is unconscious. And the better part of the information from the vagus nerve in particular, the nerve that calms the nervous system, is upward going. In other words, the vagus nerve is speaking 75% of its bandwidth is going to the brain from the body.
Wow.
So the signaling from the body, the state of the body, the tension, the reflection of the emotion, the tightness of the abdominals, all the jaw tension, etc., is speaking into the vagus nerve, which communicates up to the brain and says to the brain, regardless of your, shiny facade, regardless of the good vibes only, you are under attack and you are in duress.
Right. Okay.
And the brain is going to lean in the direction of defense.
Yeah.
It's going to lean in the direction of protection, which is called the negative bias.
Yeah.
And it will enact threat protection mechanisms, and it will cause us to clench.
I'm just curious how the habit or the pattern of negative thinking might come into play with all of this too, because sometimes I notice within myself, as much as I want to shift a thought form or a belief or something, sometimes it just feels like, oh, but that negative thought pattern is so ingrained, and it feels stuck. And it feels protective. Like it feels like I'm thinking this, I'm believing this because this is in some really warped way that this is protecting my system from some sort of danger.
Oh, I like that. I think what you've done in your phrasing there is you turned it around.
Okay.
In other words, we don't think the negative thought and therefore we can get rid of it. The negative thought is coming from a state.
Oh, okay.
So when a client came in the other day and they were describing how when they wake up in the morning and their children are awake before them, their internal perception from their old training is they're not worthy of attention right now because she must tend to the children, which is not an unfair perspective for a parent. But what she's really saying is no attention for her, all the attention on the children. And she said, I have to change that thought. And I said, let's pause for a sec. I said, that thought is an expression of a nervous system that's not feeling safe. And the way that that nervous system expresses that state would be physically, sure, through the way you feel. It would be emotionally through your emotions. And then it would be thoughts. It's producing the thought of you're not valuable.
Is that the end of the chain?
It's the outcome.
Okay.
So changing the way that that thought expresses itself wouldn't be through trying to bully your mind into better thinking, right?
That's totally what I do sometimes.
But we all do that. We say, stop that. Be tougher, be stronger.
Yeah, right.
Be kind, whatever. Instead, we have to change the state of our body. We have to change the state of our physiology. And from that state comes the thoughts, comes the thought of, the world is peaceful. I am enough, etc.
It's amazing. This is the cool thing, Adam. The guide that I channel is always talking about state of being, like constantly. Yeah. It's such a huge focus of the work. And, sometimes I think, well, I'm the channel for this being, so I shouldn't I kind of know this stuff, but I don't really. But anyways, I'm just saying that because what you're saying makes so much sense, because it explains why, let's say, in personal development and in spirituality, why you can't just, I don't know why I'm saying man up, but that's what's coming to me. It's like man up and just shift your thinking, or, I'm saying just,
oh yeah,
think positive. Yeah.
And it's out there, isn't it? Like that mentality is out there. And I think it leaves people suffering more because really smart people try to man up or try to shift their thinking with muscle.
Right.
Fail.
Yeah.
Or create more of a fight in their nervous system than even before, which is danger. More danger.
More danger.
Less safety.
Not to mention all the accumulated shame, because that would just add more shame to your...
Now I'm a failure.
Yeah.
And it really cycles.
Yeah.
And what you're also describing is the emotion is the feedback loop. So when our physiology shifts, it shifts unconsciously based on past experiences that are well unconscious. So your nervous system, when it sees a trigger or any sort of stimuli, it's always making this subconscious assessment as to what do I need best right now to be safe right here. And if some flicker of your environment reflects some old threat that your nervous system has tuned into to protect you, and it throws you into defense posture, the next thing is the emotion. It creates the posture first, the blood flow and the physiology first, and then you get the assessment of, I feel ashamed. I feel unworthy.
Right.
It's the last piece.
Right. So you're just kind of explaining why yoga has been so mind-blowingly transformative for me, I think, and breath work. Because
movement first.
It's shifting the body, and then I have the capacity and the space within me to do a reevaluation and shift my thinking and my emotions. So it sounds like it all comes back down to helping our systems feel safe and at peace and loved and nurtured. So how do we do that, Adam? How do we do that,
I love
Dr.
it. Okay.
Adam?
So I like the word you said, helping our bodies feel. So I'll sometimes use the word embodied. So we want the body to feel a sense of safety in the body, not just actual safety. Meaning, you and I right now in our homes are actually safe. Arguably, I would suggest I am, but we might not feel safe. So we need to practice the skill of embodying safety, which is kind of like that's the effort. That's the work. And then, so maybe we would take a few steps to answer that question of how do we do it? So First, when we talk about that subconscious assessment of our current state of safety, we're doing that through a lens of history of danger. So I call that our threat stack. And that could look like childhood challenges, so childhood stress. That could look like nervous system sensitivity. So in other words, some of us, there's a metaphor out there, some of us are dandelions. Yeah, I'm an old kid.
Sensitivity.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, me.
That would be me.
You know, they use a metaphor out there that some of our nervous systems are like dandelions. You know, you can run them over with a lawnmower and they'll grow back tomorrow. Some of us are like orchids, where if you look at us the wrong way, we respond. And then some of us are like tulips. The bulk of us are like tulips. I'm a bit more towards an orchid person, you know, and so more sensitive.
Yes.
More sensitive.
I am obviously more sensitive as well. Maybe that's why we were science buddies, because the universe was like, let's put these two HSPs together and see what happens.
Yeah, we were on a life raft, in fact. That's what that was. It wasn't a death.
100%.
And so imagine if, you know, you had a history of challenge when you're young and your nervous system was defending and doing its best to take care of you and create safety. And that came with a bit of a high sensitive nervous system or created a highly sensitive nervous system. Everything you feel today might be multiplied by 5, including your internal and external environments. So then we go from there. And then this young person that had experienced a childhood challenge, which not everyone does, but the bulk of, usually about 4 out of 6 chronic pain individuals experience childhood challenge of some kind, tends to have what they call stress traits. In other words, when they were going through this challenge, I like to think of it like a mountain. Like as a child, you know, they're really trying to survive. And even if their parents are well-meaning or their caretakers are well-meaning, they're trying to find their way and their nervous system is trying to help them survive. So they become good, or they become pleasers, or they become perfectionists or detail-oriented. By the way, hi.
Achievers.
Achievers. I love that. I'm an achiever. Hi.
I just put up my hand for everything that you're
all of them. Like, yeah, my brain is going, hey, me, pick me. So they have these behaviors that we take on, right?
Yeah.
So now we've got 3 things in our stress stack, because nowadays when something occurs, like the patient I told you about earlier, whose children wake up, her first thought process is take care of the kids. Be a pleaser. And it makes good sense for a parent to care for a child, but at an expense that's a little too far off. So these stress traits have us approach our challenges at a level that's different than safe. So we might have a pain in our neck, and then a perfectionist or a detail-oriented individual will say, geez, I just want it to be better. I want it to be perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know, or a pleaser will say, what am I going to do to make it better? So now we're in do mode. And I think, you know, like so we can achieve these states that are seemingly helpful to the outside world. But as far as our internal safety, the nurturing of that child, that inner body, it's not very helpful, because that requires a gentler, quieter, softer hand.
Yeah, like what I hear you saying is that when chronic pain surfaces, it sounds like people approach how they're gonna deal with that through these coping patterns that might have caused it in the first place or contributed it to the first.
Contributed at least, and that are super effective in the world, so we don't drop them.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, our detailed orientedness is what made us effective at work and what makes us a good neighbor. And so we don't need to drop it. We just need to learn that inward looking is different.
Right. Okay. So that's a huge question, because you don't want to drop it. I can see this, because it's like, okay, we have these qualities, we have these patterns, and there's usually something about it that is divine, in the sense that it's contributing somehow to whatever, your work in the world or your expression in the world. And so we don't want to drop it. How do we rectify those 2 things, though, of not wanting to drop it, but also needing to, I don't know, to deal with the way that it's showing up in maybe a more negative way?
I think asking the question is a beautiful start.
Okay.
That's a great question, right?
Yeah.
And posing the question to yourself or to the patient. You know, what we might know as in our industry as healers, we might say, okay, well, compassion. We might talk about lowering intensity. But what you're really saying is, how do we get from here to there? You know, most of us aren't oblivious to the idea of being kind and being compassionate and that kind of thing. We get it. But in that nervous system state that we were referring to earlier, where the nervous system is feeling threatened, compassion isn't a viable tool.
Right, because is it all about coming into the present in this now moment? And
that's like not a safe place to be.
Yeah, right. So we have to learn how to be in the moment and create that feeling of safety in the present moment, which might
one
require...
degree by 1 degree. So you're not wrong. We got to ask the question. A lot of times the words I will say is like, what do you say to your pain?
Right. Okay. What are some of the answers to that? When you ask that question, what do some people say?
What does your friend say?
Why is my body betraying me?
Why is my body betraying me? Right. And what might be an extension of that would be like, I hate this.
Yeah.
This sucks.
Yeah.
You know, I had an experience on the weekend for myself so I really got to witness this work. I stepped on a nail while working on our deck.
Oh, no.
I know. It's such a mistake. I was tired and I stumbled, and didn't I step on a board that was nail up? And I did everything that my patients do. What I realized truly is that it's not about being smart or not smart or being good or not good. It's a human response, right? My nervous system went straight into threat mode. I was annoyed. I was annoyed with the nail. I was annoyed with me. I was upset that I ruined the weekend because I now can't work on my deck. There was criticism. There was judgment. There was, how am I going to maintain my schedule? I was like a week out at that point. Like, of all the things I ruined.
Yeah, totally.
You know?
I'm just smiling because we all have, I mean, I've had those experiences before where you just kind of lose yourself and you just, where did I go there for that hour or day or week or whatever it was?
So critical, right?
Yeah.
And so I had to become aware of that. I know these traits in myself, and I had to start softening them and bringing safety into the moment. And so one of the ways to get to the question you're sort of going at is I had to see what I was saying to my pain, and then I had to soften those approaches. And, you know, even my partner, who I was sharing with today a little bit about that, in that, you know, went back to work, and there's this, and I know better, but did I upset work? Did I upset my ability to move, my ability to exercise, etc.? And she knows I know, you know, and it's more like, this is right where I'm at. This incident really gave me an opportunity to sit there, to pause, to in a sense, manifest safety in myself, and then remind myself that, you know, I'm worthy, that this is the path, that this is the opportunity to practice more compassion, to share with you, to share with my patients, that, hey, I did what you do on the weekend.
Yeah.
And it happens that I am versed in it. So yes, I could recover faster, maybe, but certainly on the same path that you're going to be taking or are taking. And so it was a moment of me to kind of get there a little bit.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it felt good and horrible.
Well, I mean, it cultivates that compassion you're speaking of, right? Because if you weren't in that experience at some point, and maybe, you know, the gift of returning to that experience is that you can quickly and easily access that compassion because it's been so recent that you were just in that experience of pain, right?
Yeah, very much.
So at some point in your work, maybe you were interested in meditation and mindfulness from the beginning. I'm not sure, but at some point in your work, you've integrated mindfulness and meditation into this. So how does mindfulness and meditation help us heal from chronic pain? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. When I integrated it, as a chiropractor, we were mostly hands-on. And what I noticed was that I had a lot of chronic pain clients, people that I identified with that are like me, you know, that had probably had childhood stuff, have stress traits, capable, smart people. They weren't healing. And the treatments themselves were nice and they offered relief, but they didn't change the game in the long run. And what I knew from my own experience is that it's more of a shift of state than it is the receiving of any one thing. And even the receiving of an adjustment or a treatment of any kind is meant to just provide sort of like a bit of a glimmer in your physiology of the possibility of that thing.
Right.
That
so
you
that
can
you
then
can maybe create that or access that for yourself at some point.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can feel it and
Yeah.
sense it and say, thank you for sharing that with me.
Mhm.
And now we're going to foster it and grow it and nurture it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I started mindfulness about 4 years before the pandemic itself by coincidence, and started teaching mindfulness, and putting those two things together basically gave us body-mind and mind-body approaches. So that started really making a difference as well for chronic pain patients, because it was chronic pain. One of the things it will do is it gets us into that threat mode, which is the amygdala, that animal brain.
Yeah.
And we turn off our brilliant human brain,
All right.
frontal lobe, and we're no longer able to make decisions
That makes so much sense.
or choice. And maybe you've heard that phrase that says the space between stimulus and response is choice. And so when we're really under duress, the space is very small.
That makes a lot
And
of sense to me,
mindfulness-
because I find when my state of being is off, then I get really indecisive, like super
Yeah.
indecisive. Yeah.
We can't be clear. And so mindfulness and meditation strengthens our ability to put a little space in there,
Oh, okay. Amazing.
make a little choice.
Yeah.
And so clarity is really key to this process, because we need to start to see ourselves, not only that stress stack that we talked about, the past.
Right. I guess the mindfulness aspect of it would bring us, well, I mean, both meditation and mindfulness, but bringing us into the present moment so that perhaps we can see that stress stack that you're speaking of, or see all of
Yes.
that past stuff. And maybe we still do sometimes take action or make decisions based on that. But even if there starts to be a little bit of space between acting on that or seeing that, and then seeing how that links towards your present moment actions, decisions, right?
Amazing.
Like just creating a little bit of space. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, you start to, we said earlier, like you start to witness it.
Right.
Start like I was able to do. I stepped on that nail, and I was able to calmly sit on the bench and watch my criticism, and watch my perfectionism, and watch my body clench, and then say, "Oh, neat, yeah, I did that. Okay,
Isn't that cute?
yeah, isn't that cute?" And then when we with a client, our goal is to get to this place that I call no wonder. Like a client came in this morning before our call, and her dog was not well, and her symptoms were acting up. And we were able to say, well, based on what we know about you, I think your dog not being well would be a very fair threat in your life, very reasonable threat, and one that you just love, your dog. And this is sad and hard. And so no wonder you're feeling really sore and feeling your body's expressing danger through pain. And that the patient was saying, in a sense, yeah, no wonder.
So then that brings a sense of compassion and validation, so that I think what I'm getting from that is that it feels to me like you're melting the shame that people associate when they're not quote unquote perfect. Do you know what I'm saying? Or when
That's so nice. I've never thought of it like that, but that's beautiful.
Well, because there's a lot of pressure in the world to be something, to be the achiever,
busy,
to be this.
productive.
Yes, all of that. And then and even on a physical body level, for our bodies to look a certain way, to perform a certain way. I think that when people's bodies are not living up to that subconscious expectation, there's probably a level of shame that accompanies that. And I feel like when you're giving permission for the pain to be there, I mean, it's melting that layer of shame that I'm not perfect in that moment.
And it's okay.
And it's okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And we're all in it together. And
it's okay to be human. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Have feelings, and like to grieve my dog, and to be sad and scared that my dog isn't well, and that kind of thing. My people aren't well. And
amazing. 100%.
Yeah, you got it.
So let's get into, because here's where I think perhaps your work and my work kind of crisscross a little bit, which is on this topic of life purpose. Are you lighting up a little bit?
Dang.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll tell this story. You know this story, but I'll tell it again for the people listening, that when we got reconnected, and I'm just watching you do your thing on Instagram, and I'm watching you, in your office and promoting your work and all this thing. I'm like, Adam is in his purpose, and I was so excited about it. And so I messaged you, and I was like, Adam, I'm so proud of you because you're in your purpose, and I can totally see it. And I was so excited. So anyways, this is kind of where we cross paths, because I know another thing you're passionate about too is helping people. Well, let me hand the mic over to you, and you can speak a little bit about life purpose and mission and all of that.
Oh yeah, the end of your story is that we hadn't spoken in, would have been like 30 years.
30 years at least. Yeah.
And then your first reach out to me was sharing that you were so proud of me, and then I was on purpose and you could see it. And I said that is like probably the highest compliment I could have received.
I just thought Adam probably thinks I'm a complete weirdo. Here's this girl, like, you're in your soul purpose.
Is that amazing? Is that girl from science class? I'm like, no. And so for me, like the program that I run with my patients is called Pain to Purpose.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Because of my own name, of course, could have named it in some different fashion that sounded more medical, or probably, but it just didn't work for me. And the reason why I'm doing this is that none of my patients are, they're not pain people. That's not who they are. Who they are is their purpose, their soul, their self, their highest self. And their pain, in a sense, is their nervous system interfering with their ability to do what they know they want to do.
Wow, that's amazing.
They might not be clear on it as you might know, but there's a sense in there.
Well, there's always a feeling. You might not know what it is, but there's always a feeling, just like, and I'll compare it to when you were 13, there's a feeling like, there's something there. I'm here for a reason.
I'm here for a reason.
I can feel it. I might not know what it is. And by the way, for those listening, you don't have to know what it is, but you just have to acknowledge that, hey, there's something bigger seeking to express through me, and you can feel that. So
totally. And so what we know about from the research is that if I sort of had to choose one strategy for helping someone become pain-free, which, by the way, I'll tie this back to my story, you'll see it in a sec, is it would be pursue a purpose.
Wow.
And here's why, is that when you're on purpose, you're using you're as close to self as possible. So in there we're talking
capital S, self.
Yeah, capital S. Yes. As close to you, capital Y, as possible. Because what's in there? Your values.
Yeah.
What's important to you, your boundaries are tied into this thing, and how you intend to enact that into the world, right? And when we operate like that, we're operating from our frontal lobe. We're operating outside of ourselves, or from within to serve without. And all of those, that's the exact physiology of peace, calm, and that easy feeling in the body. So moving towards purpose in and of itself it interrupts chronic pain.
So in your program From Pain to Purpose, I'm just so curious now to know, where do you start with people? Do you start with the pain, or do you start with the purpose? Because what you're saying to me is kind of like a catch-22. So
100%. So in the program, though, we start with the pain. So we start with recognize. There's 5 R's. Start with recognize. So we already spoke about a bunch of it. Recognizing where you came from. Recognizing your no wonder. Like, oh yeah, my brain sees the world through a threat lens because of accumulated danger over my life, which is very fair. That was very real. It would make sense that your nervous system would be on edge still because your nervous system was trained. The physicality of your brain was trained by those experiences. And although your wisdom might be looking forward and beyond that, your nervous system pathways are still quite attuned to that old story. So recognize, and then start to learn how we move up and down our stress ladder. So there's 5 components to your stress ladder, which would be, rest, deep rest, and then like moderate threat, acute threat, and then overwhelm. So we're just talking about the way in which our nervous system responds to danger. And what does that look like for the patient? What is if the patient were in moderate threat, which is kind of where we often operate at that level of kind of buzziness.
I would suggest that for most people is just
Right.
like normal for our society.
Totally normal.
Not
Tense,
healthy, though.
tired, wrung out.
Yeah, not healthy, but everybody's in that state. So it feels like, yeah, this is like how we
Normal.
do it. This is how we
Productive.
do it on
It's
Earth.
like too tired to sleep,
Right.
kind of thing.
Right.
And so what is like the question to the patient would be, hey, what is your body? What does your mind and emotional system and what does your perception of the environment look like for you at that state? And so can you remember a time in your life when you were at that state? And tell me, and so you have a trademark, you have like a blueprint, your body shows up in a certain way depending on a certain state. Maybe by the time you hit acute threat, that's when your headache is pounding. But at moderate threat, you can feel a tingle. So can we start to learn? I think of it like a piano.
Making those associations.
When you love the piano, right?
Yes, I do.
Yes. I think of it like the piano.
Yeah.
I say like, we got to learn to play the piano of your nervous system.
Amazing.
So when we hit this key, what does this mean for you? And everybody's different.
Mm-hmm.
And you can start to decode your nervous system. And when you learn where you are through recognizing where you are, you get to start to say, oh, I didn't realize I was about to, develop a migraine. I didn't develop I was about to incapacitate myself based on my threat load at this moment.
Right.
What do I do?
Mm-hmm.
And we start to teach strategies on how to move up and down the ladder, which begin with reset. So reset is when we're actually going to start right with the pain, like you said. We're going to start to create safety just with the pain. Like, in other words, let's bring that body part back in. Let's suggest that we're coming to support and help. To start those processes in our own mind. And then we start a process called somatic tracking, which is currently believed to be one of the best mind-body approaches to creating safety in the brain and nervous system around pain, which simply involves seeing the sensations of the body with safety and then reframing it. In other words, affirming it. And almost saying to yourself, there you go.
Yeah. And maybe making it just a sensation rather than mentally labeling it is just coming to mind too. Like,
well, like pain is an outcome.
Yeah.
Pain is, as they say, pain does not exist in the body. It exists in the brain. And so what exists in the body is a sensation perceived with danger. So a tightness, a tension, a coldness, a warmth, a tingle. And when the nervous system sees it with threat, the brain says, uh-oh, that's dangerous. We're in trouble. Send the signal down, send pain. So the brain can warn us to stop doing the thing. But the thing nowadays is no longer tiger chasing or warring with neighboring tribes or falling off cliffs. It's deadlines, it's social engagements, etc. So they're mental, emotional experiences being inhibited through physical means. It's an old nervous system response that's no longer perfectly valid for our environment, but it still exists.
Right. So we have to work with it.
Yeah, we have to work with it and calm it gently and remind it that it's safe.
Yeah.
So we had a patient in today who fell down the stairs, and it wasn't traumatic. The event was traumatic. They did not damage themselves, but they've had a headache for 2 weeks. And so we taught them how to practice this. And by the end of the session, their headache was gone.
Amazing.
So we showed them how to do it. Here, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Practice this at home. We'll talk again. Let's work on what challenges you. In other words, adults, let's go home, go fail.
Yeah.
Go mess up. And then we work on it again.
Yeah, I love it.
Until you get better and better and better.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, there's such a focus on, like, again, I've said it before, but such a focus on achievement and productivity and perfection, like being perfect and all this. So it's like...
Yes. The research says that high-level adults, which often chronic pain happens to individuals who are highly intelligent, actually, which is ironic or not. But with high-functioning adults, they learn through failure.
Wow.
And we don't know that. We don't advertise it, but they learn through failure. So go home, mess it up, and then we'll figure it out.
Screw something up, and your headache will be gone.
Yeah, and then we'll work on it and get a little better.
Well, that's amazing because here's the thing. I feel like with chronic pain, a lot of people just think there's no that you have to have some sort of medication to
Darn.
to live
Yeah.
with it or deal with it. So I love what you're saying, because what you're saying is that you don't necessarily
No.
to have medication to heal it or to manage it, right?
And the same chemistry will be elicited from the nervous system, the endocrine system, when we create that safety. So the same chemistry will be secreted in the body as per the medication, which is why, in a sense, to your question earlier, we can't start with purpose. It's too high a level.
Yeah,
to get traction.
Yeah, as we're talking about it now,
enough.
I'm realizing, like, to bring someone in who's in chronic pain and to work on purpose first would be just like probably somewhat overwhelming. So here's a question then. So do you feel, or in your experience with your patients, are you witnessing then that as they learn all these strategies and they start to alleviate their pain, that their purpose is something that surfaces almost as a result of that they don't...
It's an outcome. It's already there.
Okay, that's so liberating, because I can't tell you the amount of people who are in that question all the time, like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? What is my purpose? What you're saying is that you're not really going to be able to reveal what your purpose is unless your state of being is in the place that you want it to be first.
Check. And you may have touched it at some point in your life, for example, and maybe gone, ooh, I felt something interesting there.
Yeah.
You might not have words for it, but a sense that something bigger is there.
Yeah.
But there's no availability to it when we're in those higher level of threat activation.
Right.
You know, and a client was in today and we were going through her chart, and I was saying, hey, do you have any reference point? Like, do you have an experience in your life where you can reflect and remember a time of deep, deep rest that sort of looked like the world was peaceful and you felt very serene and your nervous system was very, very quiet and whatnot? And she honestly said no.
Wow.
Like, I don't even have a reference point for that. So she doesn't even have a compass for that. And so our job would be, over time, it would be use some of the techniques that we talk about and that you teach as well, and just give her a taste of it. Guide her there as a team, because now our connection will help with her safety.
Right, exactly.
Our presence, our time together will allow her the space to touch deep rest.
Right.
Just enough to allow the spark to sort of light something.
Yeah, and then once she is aware of that state, or once she has a taste of it, then, you know, can your body start to recognize that, and can you grow that, right?
And return.
Yeah, right.
So you're right. And over time, what I notice is, you know, like 3 to 5 years ish.
Yeah.
And people tend to come to me and share. They don't say, I found my purpose, but they have these dialogues that are so much like what you said to me, going, oh my gosh, you're doing the thing.
You found it. Yeah, I love that.
I found it.
Yeah.
And don't they all say something like, you know, but still I'm struggling with this or that or the other thing? I said, of course.
Yeah, and it's all part of it. So
yeah, of course you are.
The funny thing is that we never, like, over time you realize, oh, there is no there. Like, we don't get there.
Yeah.
There is no there.
There's no there.
But I mean, when you are in your purpose and you're on the path of whatever that is, there is a sense of passion and aliveness and vitality and excitement and radiance. And I don't know. That's what I saw in you.
And safety, more safety.
And peace and fun, even. And
all that.
Yeah.
Which, you know, you bring up, because in the reset, like, the third step is find your joy. Because you cannot create safety without joy. It's almost like just living at neutral doesn't work. We need to create both sides of this continuum again, right? And so a lot of times we'll ask the question, hey, what do you do for fun? And the people will go, ooh, wow. And the number of individuals who stutter and get stuck and then kind of go, you know, and almost with some gravity too, like recognition that that's not cool, that I don't have an answer for that.
Yeah, or it's been 40 years since I thought of it, like, since I did anything fun, or since I thought of life as fun, or
or even made a choice, you know, like, I deserve to have fun. And it's almost like they're clear that that's not what they're here for.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
You know, and so even asking that question starts this new little process of people coming in and saying things like, oh, by the way, I'm taking singing lessons. It's like, amazing. You're 40 something and you started singing lessons. Like,
I love it.
Strictly, like, so what we're really doing is nourishing self.
Yeah, you know? Exactly.
Capital S.
Yeah, capital S, self, all the way.
Yeah.
The way that I think of the spiritual path is that you're chipping away things that you're not really. Like you're chipping away programming, conditioning, maybe even the chronic pain is part of that. Things that really aren't an emanation of your true self. And so the more you chip away, then the more, you start to shine, and all of that. It starts just becoming clear. Here's the thing. People think of purpose through that lens of achievement or perfectionism, right? When it's more like, it might not appear that way. Because when you said about the singing lessons, that could be part of that person's purpose, but it's not appearing as some big, flashing light achievement or, revelation. It's just like, hey, why don't you go take some singing lessons? And then that starts to unfold into a path that feels exciting or like alignment to that person. So
totally. I like to think of it as similar to what you're saying, in a way, like expression of self in service.
Yes, definitely.
So we need to find you, like you said, what you're not, get rid of what's not, and then find it and express it.
Definitely. Yeah.
And let it out, basically, in some way or another.
Yes. And usually it will serve others in some capacity if it's, from the... Yeah.
It fosters connection.
Yeah, definitely.
It often fosters connection, which is sort of that human imperative piece.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. It'll in some way be involved in, caring for or sharing this such that someone can do better.
Exactly. I love it.
Or the world feels better or something like that.
Well, Adam, this has been one of the best conversations ever. So I'm so thankful for you, and I'm so thankful for your work in the world. And just before we go, can you share with everybody how they can find you? How can they work?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'd love to see you on Instagram. So it's Dr. Adam Bletsoe on Instagram. Look for my handle, hit follow, and we'll chat and message me.
Amazing. And your clinic is in Toronto, so if people are in the Toronto area, they can go see Dr. Adam.
And we work online.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So sometimes we do the physical work, of course, in the clinic. But a lot of this, if you, as you caught it, was about understanding and self-care, et cetera. And we can practice this online. I have a lot of clients from elsewhere.
Amazing. All right, my friend. Hope this isn't the last time we chat. So we'll meet again.
Erin,
thanks so much.
So good. Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a great day.